Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and in this video we'll get to the gameplay in a bit. I thought I'd take advantage of the opportunity just to highlight some game settings for people, because I did this a while back, but it's been, well, a while, and as of patch 1.12, Wargaming actually introduced some newer features into the UI, which is actually really awesome. So I just thought I'd mention a couple of what I think are some of the important settings, and I'm just going to show you a couple of games that will show you that with those settings what my game client looks like, and you can make your own judgments. So let's have a look at settings then. So firstly, if you are colorblind, then there is a colorblind setting, which is under graphics, colorblind mode. Ta-da! Go for it. That's what I use for my recordings, on the basis that if anyone is colorblind, then hopefully it makes them more accessible to them, and actually it's reached the point where I find the game looks weird if I have the enemy team in red these days. So I have colorblind mode turned on. Also going to mention the different game modes. So you've got windowed, full screen, and windowed borderless. I personally find that if I run the game in windowed borderless, I get notably better. Well, I get better FPS than if I run it full screen. So if you're struggling for FPS, that's something you might want to consider playing around with. Under general settings, I don't think there's too much to mention. The things I will say, though, is that you've got some options down here for things like displaying marks of excellence, hiding non-historical elements, and so on and so forth. I would suggest, there's a couple of settings I would suggest down here. So, firstly, where you've got the, down here on the loading screen, tips on the loading screen, I would suggest you set that to minimap. I personally quite like being able to see the minimap as the game is loading in, and I can just sort of start thinking about where might be useful for me to go. I just personally find that a useful feature to have. So I would recommend it, but obviously it's up to you. Enable 16 and 25 times zoom. So this is kind of like the old zoom mod has now been incorporated into the game. I don't use it because I'm not used to it, and so I find it distracting and weird. But you might want to use it, and that's entirely up to you. I might sort of try and get round to doing it at some point. Preferred sniper mode zoom level, last used, or you can set them automatically to whatever zoom mode you want. I use the shift key to switch straight from zoomed out to zoom in. I don't use anything in between. That's just how I like to play. You might be a little bit different, so you might find that setting useful. For me, it doesn't really make too much difference, but you might find it useful. Last thing I'll mention here, oh no, two more things I want to mention here. Battle recording, I suggest you enable battle recording. The replay files don't take up very much space, and it means that you can go and review them later. Or if you're having problems, you can take that replay file and, I don't know, upload it to What Replays and give the link to someone who's trying to lend a hand. So I do recommend having battle replays all enabled. On the minimap, you can see the circles in the bottom right there on my minimap. Wargaming have brought these in again. These used to be an XVM feature. So you want them all turned on, basically, so that you can see the draw range circle, the maximum spotting range, the view range, and the proximity. That's your 50-meter spotting range. And you can see the 4 circles, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're down on my minimap on the bottom right. You want all of those. I strongly recommend it. The other things I want to highlight are to do with things being displayed. So, reticule here, and how to set it up. Personally, you can see I've got a couple of these things turned off, like load and condition and whatnot. I like my interface to be relatively clean, and so I try and kind of get rid of some of the trash that I don't like. That's just how I use it. Your mileage may vary a little bit. Marker, I would recommend not using the hit point percentage. Use the actual hit points left out of total. That would be my recommendation. Why do I recommend doing that? Because, well, percentage of hit points left is meaningless. It doesn't matter. If someone's got 5 hit points left, well, that's great. But if you've got a really small caliber gun, maybe that's not enough for you to still kill them in one shot. So you want to know physically how many hit points they have remaining, and you want to know what their total hit points would be, because that can give you information about whether they've got the basic stock turret, the upgraded turret, whether they're using improved hardening, and so you shouldn't be able to rely on tracking them, and things like that. So that is what I would recommend in all views. I wouldn't bother switching between them. So, yeah, it looks like that, and that is what I would go with. Battle notifications is I guess, sort of the last thing I really want to mention. I have them all turned on because I think it provides useful information. But I would like to say, when it comes to events, some people have them all turn up at the bottom. I personally find that confusing, so I like them to be split such that you have the with the logs, you have the damage caused by you and things like that in a different position to what you're doing. So I have received damage at the top, for instance, and you can just scroll through that, and then I have what I'm doing down the bottom, and I have the damage and damage blocked and spotting damage and all that good stuff turned on as well. Map border, do what you like with. It's there. Just try not to make it too distracting for yourself. Now, battle score. This is the stuff up the top, and this is something that Wargaming introduced relatively recently. You can now have a team hit point bar so that you can see the hit point difference between the teams. That is useful. I would recommend having that on. You can see the team hit point number. I recommend having that on. You can see the team HP difference. I recommend having that on. The only one I don't recommend is displaying vehicle icons by tier. I find that confusing. I have the tier displayed over the tank so I can see what tier it is. That I just find... I'm generally less interested in that information, and I find it obscures what type of tanks are remaining. So I have that turned off. Apart from that, that's pretty much all I have to say. So the game client that you see running is almost entirely vanilla. The only thing that's not is the beautiful, let's all just behold this for a moment, the beautiful, glorious, golden turd skin, it's not really a skin, that you have here, enabling my Churchill gun carrier to be the correct colour. Big thank you to Pansy for that. Apart from that little visual thing, this is an entirely 100% vanilla game client. Last thing I will mention, if you want to change last two things I'll mention, if you want to change the minimap size, plus key and minus key on your keyboard, I generally suggest having it relatively large. That just looks a bit weird to me, so I go with that size. Exactly how big you can make it is going to depend on the resolution of your monitor. There are mods to allow you to make it bigger than the vanilla game client will let you if you're having trouble with it. But if you're not, then you don't need those mods. And when it comes to displaying the teams, personally I prefer to just see the tanks. I don't care who's driving them. Especially in the day now where you have the anonymizer, so you don't know if the team names you're seeing is the actual name. It just doesn't provide useful information. I find having the name of the player just clutters the screen. I just want to know what they're driving. So that's the setup that I use. With all that said and done, I thought I'd show you a couple of patch 12.0 replays so that you can see what the game client looks like for me. And to have those replays, I decided I'd show you a couple of British tank destroyers. Firstly, for my sins, we've got the CGC, because I haven't shown you a CGC game in a while, and I kind of feel guilty. And secondly, we've got a tank that I don't think I've ever shown before, or maybe I have, but I haven't driven before. So that will be interesting. I was expecting to hate it, but I actually quite like it. And to top it all off, both of these games are going to be bottom tier. So we're not just going to be farming tier 4s. We're going to be having to deal with the big boys. Okay, are we all clear? Is all that said and done? Cool. Let's get on to shooting things. So, the CGC here. This is a collector's vehicle these days. And it's still not particularly good. It's a very, very good gun on a very, very bad platform. And the end result is a machine that is, at best, awkward to use. What I will mention here is, so the reason I'm showing you Tier 6 games is because I've been playing Tier 6 a lot lately, and the reason I've been playing Tier 6 a lot lately is that if you're not playing ranked battles and you don't have the relevant Tier 10s, Tier 6 seems to be the most efficient tier at which to grind the battle pass. Because when you have maxed out the number of points on a particular vehicle, you get, I think it's a 15-point bonus. So, all in all, you end up accelerating your progress through the tiers. Now, that is assuming you have a pretty large vehicle collection, which I do. If you don't, then you may not find Tier 6 as efficient, but here it is. I am also going to take the opportunity to say here that, so I have over the years put up various, ace chasing games and whatnot. I'm going to stop doing that. In fact, I'm going to stop trying to, get ace tankers in tanks. If I do, great. If I don't, that's fine too. The reason for that is several-fold. Oh, hello, Mr. KV85. Yeah, you're having a bad day. So why am I doing that? Well, firstly, because these days I don't actually have as much time to play the game as I used to. I decided I was going to go through an ace stuff back when there was a lot less content in the game, and as a proportion I had a lot more of it unlocked. But these days it's just not... there's plenty of other things for me to do, and my time is limited. And it's forcing me to play tanks I don't really like, so why would I bother? And on top of that, I've noticed playing Tier 6 a lot lately, that there's a lot of players at Tier 6 these days who are new. Sorry about that, my throat's a little bit dodgy. They're new to the game. And, that's at Tier 6. And so, I don't know. I don't think wargaming is helping by encouraging people to go up the tiers, like they are. I don't think that's helpful, in general. And me, a player with, 38,000 games played or something, having me play lower tiers against people who've just joined up doesn't seem fair and doesn't seem helpful. So I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and stop forcing myself to play low tiers, because I don't really like them anyway. Now that doesn't mean I'm never going to play another low tier game again. I'm still going to grind lines all the way through. I'm not going to free XP through any tank or anything like that. But I'm not going to... Oh, that was a bad shot. I'm not going to force myself to keep playing like a Tier 3 tank until I've aced it before I can move up to Tier 4 or anything like that. Just thought it was worth mentioning now, because frankly this bit of this game is really quite dull, because all we're doing is sitting at the back here, camping, actually getting some assistance damage for knocking the tracks off of some heavy tanks, to be fair. Going for a really narrow shot, a thin shot even, that's never going to work. So anyway, that's a really long-winded way of saying, I do have a few ace games for you, but I'm not going to be, specifically trying to pick up ace tanks in machines anymore. I'm actually going to play machines I enjoy. Good lord, wonders never cease. And, unlock tanks, definitely still, as I'm going. So, with all that out the way, how's this game going? This Tier 8 game on mines. Well, I hate mines at higher tiers. So, it's not going very well. I've actually picked up some assistance damage here, believe it or not. Some tracking and some spotting. Only actually connected one shell myself, at least that we've seen. Now, I'm going to come to the conclusion fairly shortly that this is a bad place to be, because, my allies in the region have died. And despite the fact the Churchill gun carrier is slow, I'm going to take a risk and relocate somewhere that I think gives me better prospects further into the game. We'll get to that point in a moment. Now, of course, it does run the risk. The Churchill gun carrier is a really slow tank, so doing so, it does run the risk that I'm doing it now, that I'll be spotted and killed. But I'm just not being as useful anymore where I was, and if I stay there, an 87? There's a T-34-2 that have come down the 1 and 2 lines. There's a T-43 over there too. They're just going to roll me up, and I'm going to die. So, it seems to make much more sense to me to relocate, as we have done. And so we're going to come over here and try and use the opportunity to shoot some people, basically. And this poor AMD has got himself knocked over, and while we're here, we'll be a good Samaritan, and we'll right him. And he definitely won't drive out and just immediately get himself slapped, right? Oh. Well, I mean, it's the thought that counts, yeah? To be fair, the VK does get slapped in return. But, you know, given that I went to the effort to help the AMD and he just drives out in front of a KV2, I wasn't feeling particularly great about that. In fact, I'm not feeling particularly great about this game in general. The scoreline is 5-7, which isn't particularly good to start off with. And just to rub salt into the wound, we're over 3,500 hit points down, and I keep getting spotted. 87 has been seen, and, well, there's probably a T-34-2 not too far behind him, going for a shot on the sort of little commander's hatch thing. We trained shots, but my alpha damage is higher than his. He rolls low, so he's got 230 alpha damage and rolls for 200. I roll high. I have 280 alpha and roll for 308. The 87 then gets mightily slapped by the ISU, and we kill our nation mate? What's the word I'm looking for? Compatriot? We kill the scumbag in the 87. There we go, let's go with that. Ooh, IS-2, 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 22, yeah! Ooh, over 300 again, and we track him. Like I said, this is a very good gun on a tier 6 tank destroyer. It's just a shame about the rest of the tank. You can see I don't carry any premium ammunition on this thing, because this 32 pounder packs 220mm of penetration with its standard rounds. I don't need premium rounds. Yeah, the shell velocity would be better, but I don't need 252 pen on a tier 6. Regular AP is fine, and hello Mr. T-34-2, are you having a good day today? I hope you are. Ooh, that's gonna leave a mark. So, yeah, this game is not going particularly well, in case you hadn't noticed, but we're just trying to hold out, we're just trying to do what we can. Like, when you're bottom tier, in fact even when you're top tier, but especially when you're bottom tier, there's only so much you can do. You do your best. You try and keep shooting the bad guys, or keep spotting them, or whatever it is you think you need to do to try and get this game in the bag. You do what you can, you hope that it's enough, and if it is, great, you win. And if it's not the end of the world. And bizarrely, the T-34-2 is actually firing high explosive at me. I'm not 100% sure why. Hello, Mr. T-43. Oh, I'm down 2 crew members. My poor gunner and driver. Now, I put my driver back in on the basis that I need to be able to traverse round to deal with this guy. I get one more shot into him, but he's just able to kill me, but it does cost him a lot of his hit points. If I'd put my gunner in there, I may not even have had the traverse speed to put that extra shot in at the end. So, I stand by my decision to put my driver back in the tank. As it is, we go down. There's only 3 of them left on our team. We have a CS-52 on perilously low health. There was a P-43. There isn't anymore. He gets ISU'd. And then there's a 3-kill Comet. But the less said about what happened to him, the better. And that just leaves this CS-52. I mean, there's a KV-2 on the hill, for goodness sake, just to give you an idea of how wrong this game went. There's a KV-2 on the hill, but hilarity is about to ensue, so hats off to this CS-52. Against the Stura Emil, he dodges the Stura Emil, having already put 1 shot into him, puts another shot into him, the Su-100 misses him, he then pushes the Stura Emil up, still denying the guy a shot at him, finishes him off with a shot in the side, the Su-100 comes for him, he dukes the Su-100, the ISU-152 misses him, kills the Su-100, gets around the side of the ISU-152K, and this Soviet tank destroyer is screwed, except they still have a KV-2 on the hill. But, can I just have a shout out, please, for our CS-52, Board 33, not quite sure how to pronounce that, but either way, right there was just the stuff that legends are made of. 3v1 and just outplaying them. Okay, you got a little bit lucky, but I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Anyway, that's the game. Let's have a look at the post-game stats. So we weren't able to pull a win out of that game, unfortunately, but considering that we were in what is generally considered to be a pretty terrible tier 6, and we were bottom tier, and not exactly on a map that's very comfortable for tanks like that, I think we did alright. So, you know, I'm happy to show it. 3rd class mastery and fire for effect. No heroic resistance there, or anything like that. We just didn't do quite enough. But How did the rest of our team do? Well, you can probably guess where this is going. We came top of our team, 2,144 damage done, 1 kill. Why would we come top of our team when someone else did more damage? Well, we were shooting higher tier things. Shot into the T-34-2, he's tier 8. 2 shots into the IS-2, he's tier 7. 2 into the T-43, tier 7. Shots and killed the AT-7, he's tier 7. And the KV-85 is tier 6. So, all of them were equal or higher tier. I do want to give a shout out though to our CS-52 again. 3,500 damage and 2 kills from you, sir. You were definitely trying to put your carry pants on. It just wasn't quite enough, and there were some lovely dukes at the end there to deal with those tank destroyers, so hats off to you. To everyone else on our team, for shame, you got beaten by a Churchill gun carrier. Just take your coat, hang it up, and get out. Like, what are you doing with your lives? And even on the enemy team, we got more damage than anyone on the enemy team. The ISU 152K hits for 750 with every shot, and we did more damage than he did. Ugh, fear the mighty CGC. I do want to commend, though, the KV2 on the hill. He was a bit of a nightmare, hats off to him. E25 also got himself onto the hill and made a bit of a nuisance of himself, so credit where credit is due. And the T-44 who killed me with gold ammo, I suppose, because you really need gold to penetrate a CGC. 17 shots fired, 10 hits, 8 penetrations. The gun is very good. The accuracy there looks a little bit off because we were taking quite a lot of, let's say, rather speculative shots. Most of that damage was actually from closer range than you would typically expect in a tank like that. 5 hits received, 4 penetrated, 1... Well, it's not that it bounced, it's just that it was splash from a HE round, so go figure. 5 enemy vehicles damaged, 1 destroyed, almost 1,000 assistance damage. We didn't drive very far because it's mines and you're in a CGC. But we did oh, I cannot English. We did make a profit in credits. There we go, we got there in the end. So there we are. CGC, tier 8 game. Weren't able to quite make it a win, but we were able to give it a bit of a good go. Another replay to show you where once again we're at a tier 6 British tank destroyer and we are at the bottom. Game number 2 then, and we are in another tier 6 British tank destroyer. This is the Achilles. Yay. So, I've never played this thing before. This isn't my first game, the one I'm showing you here. It's not my first game in it, but before this batch of games, I'd never played this thing before. I've been up the turreted British tank destroyer line, but I got to it through the Sherman Firefly. So I'd never actually played the Achilles, and I was expecting it to be not very good. Because it's like the American turreted tank destroyers, but with a smaller caliber gun. Don't know where that shell went, right? Well, not really, actually. I mean, it does have a smaller caliber gun, and it does have a turret, like the American turreted TDs, but yeah, there are a significant number of differences. And I was expecting the 5 degrees of gun depression to kind of suck, and it does, but you can make it work. In fact, I'm actually enjoying this thing, or have been enjoying this thing more than the Jackson, which previously was my go-to turreted tier 6 tank destroyer. You get, so some things that tend to be glossed over with this thing, you get better gun handling than you do on the American machines. You get better DPM as well. Ooh, that T-150 is having a bad day. And so if you're in a prolonged fight, you have a higher damage output than the Americans, although they'll be better for single shot. Your better gun handling allows you to take more chancy shots in the Achilles. And actually, whilst it's not as fast as a Hellcat in a straight line, it's surprisingly nimble for such a tank. One thing, by the way, that some people have about this thing as a misconception historically. People think that the Achilles is an M10, so American M10, sometimes called Wolverine tank destroyer, with a 17-pounder gun. And that's not strictly true. The Achilles is just the name that was given to the M10 when in British service. It doesn't have to have the 17-pounder gun, though it can. Oh, I take a hit there from an E75 TS, and we've flub that shot hideously. I've loaded APCR here. You're going to see me fire lower front plate, one or two rounds, in fact a few rounds of APCR here, because we're bottom tier. So just to pick up on the point I was making, so the Achilles was just the name for the M10 in British service, and if this thing comes with the M10's 3-inch gun, that's still an Achilles, if it's in British service. Of course, if it has a 17-pounder, that's an Achilles too. It's just, that doesn't define the tank. And goodbye, Britannia Panther, French Panther, you are gone. So, the gun, it's the 17-pounder gun. You've got 171 average penetration, and yeah, the base is looking dicey. 150 average damage, and with APCR that pen goes up to 239. So your penetration isn't bad. I mean, this gun is used on quite a few tier 6, hello Barask, tanks, especially tank destroyers in the British tech tree. Now, I'm going to, I guess, advocate here that you should have a little bit of gold ammo on your tanks as a general rule of thumb for those situations when you need it. And I say that as a, I don't run a premium account or anything like that, but there will be situations where it really can be the difference between winning a game and losing a game. And you can see this game has actually been quite close. Now, 50 TP prototype. This is an interesting engagement. Shots into his side, my regular AP is fine. Into his lower front plate, however, the lower front plate on that thing, square on, so if he's just facing me... Oh! I didn't actually need the APCR round for his side here, because I didn't realise he was going to give me his side. The lower front plate, the 171 penetration on this gun will have about roughly a 50-50 chance to penetrate, even assuming you're at, relatively close ranges so you don't get too much penetration drop off with distance. And we're capping this. Oh wait, no, sorry. Our Barask is capping this. Or their Barask is capping this. I will get my words right in a moment. And I can't go over there to reset the base because that 50 TP can just happily wreck me. So what I'm doing instead is I'm heading toward the enemy base. I think this gives us the best chance to win. Essentially, I'm relying on the enemy team going, no cap, kill all. Because the Barask could have capped this out to win. Please bear that in mind. Now I saw the 50 TP, it looked like he was going to drop down into the dip, so I'm loading APCR here, again because if I have to fight him frontally, and if he's dropping down into the dip he could come up here and I might have to, the APCR means that my well-aimed shots should penetrate. If I have AP, I can aim as well as I like, there's a very good chance I'm still going to bounce these rounds. So, that first one bounces anyway, and he's flubbed his shot. Oh dear. I was mentioning the higher DPM of this tank and better gun handling compared to the Americans. Yeah, that right there. Unfortunately, the Barask had actually made it across the bridge and takes me out with his shot. So I am dead. That's unfortunate. But we've got two tanks still in the cap circle. Can the Barask make it to the cap circle and decap in 4 seconds? Well, he gives it a good go, to be fair to him. Takes a punt at the Renegade, but he just doesn't have the time to properly aim that shot. And we win by capping. And so that actually ended up being a victory where maybe it shouldn't have been. If that Barask had just sat in our cap circle, we didn't have anything that could challenge him. And pretty sure the enemy team would have capped that game and won it. As it is, the Barask did not. And we were able to prevent the 50 TP. We got a little bit lucky as he missed us. 50 TP, who by the way had racked up a Top Gun, we managed to prevent him from going to get the reset, either with a little bit of APCR where it was needed. So, let's have a look at the post-game stats for this one. There we go then, that was enough for a First Class Mastery, Fire for Effect ribbon, and a Halonen's Medal, which is not one you see too often. Basically a Halonen's Medal you get for playing in a tank destroyer and murderizing at least 2 enemy tanks who are 2 tiers higher than you. So we were able to kill the E75 TS and the 50 TP prototype, both of whom are tier 8 tanks, so we get the Halonen's Medal. I always like medals like that because it's Yeah, you took on big scary guys and you won. I don't know, I just find that quite satisfying. We finished top of our team by experience with 2068 damage done, 3 kills, 887 base XP. Shout out should go to the M54 Renegade, 2606 damage, 2 kills, 879 base XP. And also, frankly, the friendly LTG there. That's an awkward map for a light tank, and at the end, the two of them capped out to get us the win. On the enemy team, shout-out should go to the 50TP prototype, 2854 damage, and a top gun, not enough to secure a win for his team. And a shout-out should also go to the enemy Batchatillon Barask, because without him leaving our cap circle, we couldn't have won that. So, thank you, Mr. Barask. He might have killed me, but I will happily consider myself bait for that particular game. 27 shots fired, 19 hits, 16 penetrations for that damage count. Most of which was from actually relatively close range. That's the sort of map you're on. 2 hits received, armor did nothing, 2 penetrations, and that was enough to kill us. It was a tier 8 game at the end of the day. A little bit of splash, although that didn't actually do any hit point damage to us. 4 enemy vehicles damaged, 3 destroyed, 1.66 kilometers travelled. We made a loss in credits on that one. We would have made a loss even with a premium account, and that's because we fired 7 or 8 APCR rounds. But those APCR rounds, I'm pretty sure, won our team the game. And I can shrug off an 11,000 credit loss here or there. You don't fire much APCR in the Achilles, but in a situation like that, yeah, I'll take it. It's actually a pretty quick game, all things considered, and there was a mission thing running at the time, so I gained a bunch of XP for my crew. I can't remember if my crew were 100% at that point, because I retrained for credits. Can't recall. Doesn't matter. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed that couple of games, and I hope you guys found it interesting and possibly informative to see some of the settings I use to give you the UI that you see and how I play the game. As Wargaming periodically just sort of add more features, I suppose, to the user interface, I do think it's worth occasionally just going back to them to highlight them to people that may not be aware, either because they've run mods that have done it themselves, or maybe they're just not aware. And yeah, there we go. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, by all means feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel, and as ever, I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao ciao.